Cardinal Luis Antonio Tagle was warned, not by man, but by something unseen, and what he saw in the shadows of the Sistine Chapel shook his soul to the core. It began with a silence, not an ordinary silence, but one so heavy, so absolute, that it pressed against the heart like 1,000 years of unspoken sorrow. The cardinals were still arriving, murmurs echoing through the sacred halls of the apostolic palace. But Tagle was already seated, eyes fixed on a fresco above him, one that had never moved, and yet, in that moment, seemed alive. Michelangelo's Last Judgment stared back with a fire that wasn't painted. It was real. He felt it before. He heard it. A shiver, like breath on the back of his neck. "Watch the white smoke," the voice whispered, not from behind him, but from within. At first, he dismissed it as exhaustion. The weight of choosing the next vicar of Christ bore down on every man in that room. But the voice returned, not louder but deeper. And this time, it named a name. Robert Prevost. Tagle's hands trembled. He knew that name. Everyone did. The quiet, scholarly cardinal from Chicago. A man few expected to rise, yet one who held the hearts of many with his humility and fire. But why would the Spirit name him now? Why before the vote? Why in the dead space between prayer and decision? And then came the image. A flash, a chalice tipped. Blood, not wine, cascading across the marble altar, and lightning striking the dome of St. Peter's in reverse, not down from heaven but up from the earth. He gasped. Across the room, Cardinal Burke looked up. Sarah raised an eyebrow. Neither spoke, but both saw it. Just a flicker, just for a second. The lights dimming, flickering, returning. That night, Tagle did not sleep. When the conclave began, the ballots were cast with solemnity. Whispers followed as always, but no one suspected what was to come. By the second vote, something shifted. The name Prevost, a quiet anomaly in round one, multiplied, like embers catching flame in dry wind. By the fourth round, his name was ablaze, and then white smoke. The world watched with awe. The first American Pope, the 268th successor of St. Peter, Pope Leo XIV. But Tagle did not cheer. He dropped to his knees. He had seen what others hadn't, not just a man ascending, but a gate opening. Days later, during the Pope's first private Curia meeting, Tagle requested an audience. It was granted. He walked the narrow stone corridors of the apostolic palace, rosary in hand, heart pounding. When he entered the private chamber, Leo XIV was alone, standing before a crucifix older than memory. "You were warned," the Pope said before Tagle could speak. The air turned cold. Tagle's lips parted, but no words came. Leo turned. His eyes were damp. "The voice spoke to me the moment the last vote was counted." Tagle blinked. It said, "Do not refuse the cup, for what comes must come." The two men stared at each other. No fear, only understanding. From that day forward, something changed in the Vatican. Leo XIV, though new, began making decisions with astonishing clarity. He demanded immediate audits of hidden abuse cases. He instructed that financial secrecy be stripped from the Vatican Bank. And most shockingly, he reinstated full celibacy with 0 exceptions, even in regions where it had been pastorally allowed. And still, the miracles. A Swiss guard collapsed at the gate, declared dead. Moments later, woke up whispering, "He walks with the dove." A statue of the Virgin stored deep in the archives began to weep, only once, the night before Leo's address. And then, the confession of Cardinal Di Naro. An influential figure from Eastern Europe, one of the fiercest opponents of reform, walked into the confessional and told the Pope himself, "The dragon sleeps beneath the basilica, and you were chosen to wake it." What did he mean? No one knows. Dinaro was found in the Tiber 2 days later. No wounds, no drugs, just a gold medallion in his pocket, engraved with a single word, 13th. Rumors exploded. Some say Leo XIV was warned of this moment from childhood, that at age 12, in a dream, he walked through St. Peter's Square alone. The sky split open, and a voice said, "One day, you will hold the keys, but not for the church, you know." He never spoke of it publicly, but on the night of his election, as he knelt before the tomb of St. Peter, a wind blew through the basilica, though no doors were open. Cameras captured it. A swirl of petals, white and red, circled the altar. And the next morning, Cardinal Sarah fainted. When revived, he said nothing, but for weeks after, he wore a single strip of sackcloth beneath his garments. He would not explain. Back in the Philippines, Cardinal Tagle began to speak more openly. He gave a homily, now archived, where he looked into the camera and said, "Some things are voted, some things are chosen, but this was neither." And then, silence. Because what happened next, no one saw coming. Pope Leo XIV announced a convocation, unprecedented. A summit not just for Catholic leaders, but for the hidden righteous. He claimed it came to him in a dream. "I saw them," he said in his Vatican press address. 12 among the nations, not bishops, not priests, but holy ones. Men and women hidden from the world. God is gathering them. The church exploded with speculation. Was this prophecy? Madness? Renewal? Tagle remained silent, until a letter, leaked handwritten, from Pope Leo to Cardinal Tagle, its content blurred and redacted, except for the final line. "The time of comfort has ended. The days of glory must return, and you must stand at my left when it begins." And still, Rome trembled. Because deep inside the Vatican vaults, archivists discovered a locked compartment, unopened since 1893. Inside, a scroll. Ancient Greek, a prophecy. Its last phrase, "When the lion rises from the west, the stars will fall from the east, and the one who weeps shall bear the crown of thorns." They believe the lion is Leo, but who weeps, who carries the crown, and, why, did Cardinal Burke recently tell a group of cloistered sisters, "Prepare your lamps, the bridegroom will arrive at midnight." You decide what this means. 4 days after the mysterious scroll was discovered, the Vatican Observatory, perched in the silence of Castel Gandolfo, reported something unusual. A celestial alignment never charted before. Jupiter, Mars, and Venus formed a perfect triangle above Rome, with Saturn rising behind them like a silent sentinel. Astronomers dismissed it as coincidence, but the Pope did not. Leo XIV ordered all external Vatican operations paused for 48 hours. All travel, all speeches, all interviews, canceled. He entered the Apostolic Palace Chapel at midnight and did not emerge until dawn. Only 2 witnesses confirmed what happened in that darkness. A weeping sound was heard through the marble floor, and a fragrance, roses and ash, filled the halls. That morning he walked out pale, trembling but transformed. He delivered a single line to the gathered Swiss guard. "It has begun." No explanation. But in the days that followed, churches began to burn. Not by arson. Not by man, but from within. In Krakow, Poland, a centuries-old church collapsed at dawn. No signs of wear. The altar stood untouched, but the walls were vaporized into fine powder. Investigators found one object unharmed beneath the rubble, a crucifix carved in 1414. Its eyes, painted centuries ago, now bled. In Brazil, during Mass, the Eucharist turned black in the priest's hands. Not rotten, not mold, just darkness, rich, pure, absorbing light. A child screamed from the pews, "He is coming in smoke." The church tried to suppress it, but the videos leaked, and then came the division. Inside the Vatican itself, 2 factions began to form. Not liberal versus conservative, Not traditionalist versus progressive, but the shield and the veil. The shield. Cardinals and clergy who stood firmly with Leo XIV, believing the time of purification had come, that the bride of Christ must be made spotless through fire and trial. Their symbol, a small white cross over the heart. The veil, those who believed Leo's visions were dangerous, that he was being deceived by false spirits, that the church needed stability, not prophecy. Their emblem, a signet ring turned inward, tradition hidden, protected, and in the middle, Cardinal Tagle, the man who had been warned. He alone was invited into both factions, and he alone refused to wear either mark. They called him the Watcher Between Doors. It was Tagle who first discovered the sealed chamber beneath the crypts of St. Cecilia's Basilica, a passage long hidden behind a false wall of confessionals. Inside, etched in Latin, a phrase no one expected. Adveniat regnum tuum, sed prius sanguis. Thy kingdom come. But first, blood. The air in that chamber was thick. Time itself felt slow, and as they stepped deeper in, what they found was more than history. It was a mirror that reflected not their faces, but their sins. Cardinal. Burke, who followed Tagle into the chamber, fell to his knees. Witnesses say he sobbed, not from fear but from revelation. "We are not ready," he whispered. "We are not worthy." For months, Leo XIV grew quieter, more withdrawn. He refused audiences with diplomats. He skipped ceremonial meetings. He would sit for hours beneath the statue of St. Michael in the gardens of the Vatican, eyes closed, lips moving, fingers locked in white-knuckled prayer. And then, the prophecy was fulfilled. The bell of St. John Lateran rang at midnight. It had not done so in over 700 years, not since the death of Pope Innocent III. No one rang it. It rang itself. Inside the Vatican archives, a sealed letter from Pope John Paul II, marked, "To be opened only when the bell rings unbidden," was retrieved. Leo XIV opened it in private. The contents were never made public, but the next day he spoke from the window of St. Peter's, not to address the faithful, but to warn them. "My children, the hourglass of mercy is almost empty. The bride of Christ must now enter the fire. Those who stand in white will be refined. Those who hide in crimson shall be exposed. The Holy Church will not fall, but she will bleed. Stay awake." The cry is, "Coming at midnight, and the groom is closer than you think." The square was silent. People wept openly. Journalists called it madness. Prophets called it the Second Pentecost. Skeptics mocked it as papal theatrics. But then, a priest in Nigeria collapsed during Mass, rising seconds later, eyes glowing white, speaking perfect Aramaic, a language he never learned. An infant in Syria, born blind, opened his eyes and whispered, "Leo must not be crucified." And in the catacombs beneath Paris, 3 seminarians vanished for 2 days. When found, they were unharmed, but unable to speak. One held a parchment that read, "Et filius vivit," and the Son lives. Meanwhile, the veil moved in secret. Cardinal Hays, whose name remains redacted in all public reports, met with leaders of 3 powerful orders. Jesuits, Opus Dei, the Silent Order of Malta. Their plan? To declare Pope Leo mentally unfit, to remove him quietly, with the world none the wiser. But Tagle knew. A courier warned him. A nun who claimed she had seen it in a vision of blood. She said, "He must not walk alone into Gethsemane, or we will lose him." Tagle raced through the Vatican that night, past sleeping guards, past locked gates, up the private stairway of the papal residence. He reached the door. It was open. Inside, Leo XIV knelt before the Eucharist. The host glowed. Tagle gasped. The Auri Pope turned, smiling faintly. "I know why you're here." "They're coming," Tagle said. "I know. Then run. We can hide you, protect you." But Leo shook his head. "If I run, the shepherd leaves the flock. A tear fell. "Would you stand beside me, Luis?" And Tagle, breath-shaking, voice-breaking, said, "Until the end, even unto death." And outside, the doors began to rattle. The doors burst open. Figures cloaked in black surged into the papal chamber, silent, expressionless, faces hidden beneath crimson-lined hoods. These were not Swiss guards. These were not cardinals. These were the custodes umbrae, the ancient watchmen of the shadow, long believed to be a myth whispered only in the oldest seminaries. Their purpose? To preserve the structure of the church, even if it meant silencing its shepherd. Leo XIV did not flinch. He stood slowly, holding nothing but a single wooden rosary, worn smooth from decades of prayer. Tagle stepped forward instinctively, ready to shield the vicar of Christ with his own body, but the Pope raised a hand. "No," he said. "If the grain of wheat does not die, it remains alone." One of the custodes raised a blade, another a vial, labeled Memoria Expectat, the waiting memory, rumored to erase all trace of a soul's divine calling. But before a step was taken, a sound cracked through the chamber like thunder, not from the heavens above, but from the earth beneath. The marble floor split open. A beam of pure light surged from the chasm, blinding, golden, alive. The cloaked men fell backwards screaming, clutching their faces. And from the light came a voice every soul in the room understood, though it spoke no language of man. "He is mine, you shall not touch him." The time of judgment begins not with his fall, but with his rise. The custodes vanished, dissolved like ash in holy water. Leo dropped to his knees, and so did Tagle, for standing before them was Peter, not a painting, not a vision, not a ghost, but the first shepherd, rugged, worn, glorious, his eyes held the pain of betrayal and the fire of redemption. He spoke only to Leo. "You bear my keys, but you must now carry my cross." And then he was gone. Only the scent of incense remained, and the soft ringing of unseen bells. The next morning, Pope Leo XIII emerged onto the balcony of St. Peter's. But he wore no papal vestments, only white linen, barefoot, simple, and he said nothing. Instead, he held up a scroll. The scroll, the one found beneath the crypts. He opened it slowly, as millions watched, and he read only one line. "Let the bride prepare herself, for her groom approaches in fire." Lightning split the sky. A storm that had not been forecast rolled in with supernatural fury. Thunder like the trumpets of angels, rain falling only within Vatican walls. The world stood still, and then silence, until the sun turned red. Across nations, across languages, across disbelief, people looked to the sky and wept. Something had changed, and the change could not be undone. Within the Vatican, a new era was declared, not by decree, but by destiny. The age of comfort had ended. The age of purification had begun. Leo XIII no longer called himself Holy Father. He called himself the Watchman. He said the church must return to the catacombs, that miracles would no longer be rare but costly, that the false shepherds would be exposed by name, that those who stood against the bride would see her clothed in fire and still unburned. And so the secrets were unsealed, from vaults hidden by centuries of silence, from lips once sealed by fear, and the world saw that the church was never weak. She had only been sleeping, and now she was awake. The final twist? A single envelope delivered anonymously to the Vatican press office days later. Inside, a photo. Faded, old, black and white. A young boy, no older than 10, staring at the statue of St. Peter's in 1953. On the back, written in trembling Latin, "This is the child who will carry the wound. He must never be named. He will be born again when the dove weeps red." The child was Cardinal Tagle, and the ink? Not ink. Blood, the photo, dated August 6th, Tagle's birthday, and also the anniversary of the Transfiguration, the moment when Christ, hidden in flesh, revealed his glory. Now, Once again, the veil has been torn. And behind it, the lion is roaring. The groom is at the door, and the bride, once veiled, now prepares herself, with tears, with light, and with fire. The end is not the end. It is the unveiling, and it has begun.